What's happening, everybody? All right, well, putting a new tire on Stormy, but I also wanted to chronicle some of the damage that hitting that big chunk of steel caused. Nothing that's going to slow Stormy down, but some of it was a little more dramatic than what I'd initially anticipated. And yes, we are rocking a jack stand for safety. All right, guys, so check this out. Some of this may not jump right out at you, but you can see right here at the front of that portion of the wheel well where it's kicked out right here. Yeah, that's custom. So that's just the one spot where it hit there, and luckily it didn't really take anything out. Now, it did manage to whack this support right here pretty good. Obviously that's supposed to be straight, not jacked and bent like that. As far as the plastic bits go, that little guy right there, that's going to be covered up by what's in essence a small splash guard. But the fender well portion, the fender well on these DTs is actually in two pieces, and it absolutely ripped that thing completely to shreds. Luckily it managed to miss the shock, although I don't know how, and pretty much anything else just aft of the axle was unaffected as well. But that little guy, is that focusing? There you go. Look at that shiner. Wow. You can see where there's actually some filleted steel sitting out there. I'm going to actually take care of that and get that painted. The thing is, it's not a divot. It is a dent. You can feel it from behind. It's a solid dent, but to give you an idea of the impact of how hard that is, that's the thickness of the steel. Okay, so pretty substantially thick frame steel. And that thing hit it hard enough to hit it like that, you can see that, actually discolor it a little bit with how hard it hit. I mean, there must have been sparks all over when it hit. And then cause that dent, which you really can't see, but you can definitely feel. So it's not a divot, it's a true dent, but can you imagine how much force it takes to actually move that amount of steel that quickly? No wonder why it sounded like a bomb went off underneath this truck. Pretty impressive. I'm glad that piece of steel didn't hit anything else, because obviously with that amount of damage and with that amount of force, anything that steel would have hit would have just mangled it. But I did want to go over one other thing with you guys, just kind of a personal opinion piece when it comes to wheel locks since I'm here. So guys, when it comes to wheel locks, you've got a couple of different options. You've got the keyed type, like with this flower end over here. That's actually what's on the truck now. It's also the same kind that goes on the spare tire winch mechanism. And you have this type of keyed lug where it fits entirely, if I can do this with one hand, into the actual socket. Guys, although there's nothing inherently wrong with these, one thing is for sure, they are absolutely unsightly. And to just have one of these things on your wheel, just, I don't know, for my OCD, it drives it nuts having something different. This one kid is certainly not like the others. But here's a point that's a little bit more near and dear to me. So when I was pulling this thing off, it's not like this thing was put on with an impact set to high, but the four-way over here, when I was going to pull this thing off, it actually slipped a little bit and galled it. Not much, but just a little bit. The problem that you run into with these is that it's such a limited engagement right here that you end up with a situation that if this lug is put on there by some kid with an impact wrench that's just hammering it home, when this thing goes to come off, especially if you're out in the middle of nowhere, first of all, you need to make sure you have your key with you. Kind of like if you don't know that you're supposed to have a key to drop your spare tire. Kind of like if you don't know you're supposed to have a key to drop your spare tire. Kind of like if you don't know you're supposed to have a key to drop your spare tire. All right, I think I've hammered that point home. Anyway, the issue is if this thing is on there with a ton of torque, what can happen is you can end up basically not being able to get this thing on there with enough force as you're turning it to get this thing off of there. In other words, you may end up with a slip situation with this thing. It's just not very positive when it comes to the engagement, especially, you know, if you're on the side of the road, it's freezing cold. I just don't really have a lot of faith with these things. I've never had a lot of luck with this type of a keyed lug nut. Whereas these types of keyed lug nuts, you're going to use all 20 of these, or however many lug nuts you happen to have on your vehicle, but in my case 5 per, so you're going to use all 20 of these, so at least they're uniform looking, and when you go to put them on or take them off, it is a full positive engagement. No worrying about the key slipping out of or slipping off of your lug nut and potentially causing damage and making it to where you can't actually remove your wheel on the side of the road or wherever you might be. So guys, I got to get back to work, get this thing wrapped up, at least get the wheel and tire put back on this thing. But I will be getting everything replaced. I'm waiting on the parts to show up. As soon as they do, Storm will be back to being good as new. Anyway, there's your update. Y'all have a great one. Adios.